Good morning, all people. Professor Mohamed El Bouchiki has asked me to present the research and book on the thinking of peripheral regions. Voices from Peripheries, Introduction to Peripheral Thinking, Asia, Africa, Latin America, Eurasia, and more. I thank the professor for the opportunity he has given me to present this work. I will develop 5 points. Point 1. This book has aimed to be a kind of history of thought in the regions that have been considered, or at least have been assumed by their intellectualities as peripheral during the last few centuries. Published some years ago, he had a relatively wide distribution in Latin America and the Caribbean, enjoying, among other things, the Latin American Council Social Science Edition. It was conceived as a virtual book. It took me more than 10 years to prepare it, gathering material from many places, as indicated below. When I seemed reasonably mature, I went out into the world, but for its part, only in Spanish. A book of almost 1,000 pages made difficult a translation into other languages. This book contains reference to approximately 70 countries, 20 in Africa, 25 in Asia, 20 in Latin America and the Caribbean, and 5 in Southern Europe and the Slavic world. It includes research conducted in person in India, Senegal, Mexico, Argentina, Brazil, Portugal, Puerto Rico, the States, France, Spain, and of course in Chile, my country, among others. This extensive text has attempted to encompass the development of thought produced over the last few centuries in that part of the world we call global south, whose thinking we know so little about. My travels and readings have shown me that to a large extent, the same is true in Latin America, Asia, and Africa. The thought of each of these regions is unknown even among themselves. Point 2. It has been said that the peripheral, pardon, it has been said that the peripheries are culturally too different and therefore cannot converse with one another. That some peripherals have a Muslim history, other Buddhist or Confucian history, other Christian or animist, and so on. These cultural differences are supposedly so significant that they prevent conversation between them. But European and later North Atlantic expansion, with its invasions and aggressions, however, has united the peripheries. These aggressions and created conditions of similarity that have greatly facilitated dialogues over the last few centuries. Faced with expansions, intellectualities from all peripheries have been reacting since the 18th century with what has been called the peripheral dilemma. To shake off domination and subordination, all these intellectualities consider two options: To be like the center, to imitate it, or to delve deeper into identity in order to overcome its dominance. These two options have been raised everywhere in the peripheries. The hypotheses of the book are: 1. The most comprehensive way to understand the thought produced in peripheral regions over the last few centuries is formulated around the dilemma of being like the center or being ourselves. This problem has been posed by Latin American, African, and Asian intellectualities, as well as by Slavic, Balkan, and Iberian intellectualities in this period. 2. The dilemma gives meaning to other issues that are articulated around it in diverse and complex ways. For example, the problem of development and underdevelopment, the problem of globalization or non-globalization, or the problem of the type of technologies to employ. 3. This dilemma often arises spontaneously within the intellectualities of these regions after having experienced the impact of the center, without having been aware of what was produced elsewhere. The debate between these two options, the centralitarian one, attention, no centralist, centralitarian one, to be like the center, and the identitarian one, to delve deeper into identity, is what is called the peripheral dilemma. It is found everywhere and constitutes the main point of intellectual convergence among the regions of the global south. Even into the 21st century, the debate surrounding globalization has been framed in these terms. Point 3. Mutual ignorance among the peripheries has two disastrous consequences. We fail to take advantage of the ideas of other regions, and we are unable to engage in dialogues because we know so little or nothing about each other. This book aims to be a contribution to remedy this lack of knowledge by showing similarities, connections, parallels, networks, etc., in relation to peripheral thought. I give special importance to the networks that articulated intellectualities in various sub-regions. In this regard, I was interested in contributing to the net creation in two ways: by showing examples of networks that has been successful, and by highlighting a conceptualization that motivate and facilitate these networks to the extent that we recognize a great amount of meeting points. It is important to bear in mind that peripheral or semi-peripheral regions, those that do not participate in the North-Atlantic Center, constitute more than 80% of humanity. For this reason, they possess an immense cultural and ideational heritage, an immense diversity, diversity of ideas and cultures, which is regrettable to forget. For the intellectualities, it is doubly serious not to consider it. Discovering, researching, reworking, looking for point of contact is very relevant. For us, studying the peripheries is more necessary than studying the center. Point 4. This process of understanding and recognizing through networks the great figures and thinking trends from the intellectual ecosystem of the global south is of great importance. It is relevant because it allows us to map the trajectory of ideas and the intellectual ecosystems where they have taken root. The book highlights hundreds of significant intellectual figures, as well as dozens of thinking trends that are forms of expression and that do not appear in the canons of North Atlantic centrism. To mention just a few figures studied in the book, from East Asia, Liang Qichao, Sun Yat-sen, Lu Xun, Nishida Kitaro, among dozens. From South Asia, Rabindranath Tagore, Mohandas Gandhi, Muhammad Jinnah, Sukarno, Jawaharlal Nehru, Gayatri Spivak, among dozens too. From Sub-Saharan Africa, Edward Blyden, Olive Schreiner, Leopold Senghor, Achille Bembe, Amina Mama, etc. From Latin America, Simón Bolívar, Gabriela Mistral, Raúl Previch, Fernando Cardoso. From the Caribbean, Franz Fanon, Walter Rodney, Derek Walcott, etc. From Central Asia, Jamal Eldin Afghani, Ali Shariati, and others. From the Slavic and Balkan world, Adam Mickiewicz, Nikolai Danilevsky, Joseph Broz Tito. From the Arab world and the North Africa, Muhammad al-Wahhab, Rifa al-Tatawi, Taha Hussein, Mohamed Abdu, Gamal Abdel Nasser, Sajid Kubt, Michel Aflaq, Albert Memmi, Mehdi Ben Barka, Mohamed Arkoun, Samir Amin, among others and more. Some of the thinking trends developed in the global south and addressed in this book, I can mention Russian Westernism, Sunnism, Latin American Romanticism, Chinese Reformism, Slavophilia, Native Positivism, Pan-Slavism, Iberism, Pan-Asianism, Arialism, Negritude, Pan-Africanism, Latin American Unionism, Pan-Arabism, Cipalism from Economic Commission for Latin America, Pan-Buddhism, Dependentism, Liberationism in theology, pedagogy, philosophy, sociology, and feminism, etc. I'm not going to offer you a list of intellectual figures for each of these schools of thought. Don't worry. Point 5. One consequence of this research has been launched the South-South Intellectual Encounters Project, which aims to create intellectual networks to circulate the thinkings of various peripheries as well as to disseminate these ideas globally. While the peripheries and semi-peripheries represent approximately 80% of the world population, their influence on the circulation of culture and ideas at the university level, in the media, academic publications, and internet, and elsewhere, does not even reach 40% of the global circulation of messages. Today, The greatest task, in my opinion, of peripheral intellectual networks, and in part our South-South intellectual encounter, is to demonstrate that in the face of the North Atlantic project, a multitude of options exist. The knowledge of humanity in its diversity present a lot of options and is in no way reducible to this North Atlantic project naturalized and manipulated by a geopolitics of knowledge. The task of diversity that we are presenting should not be imagined as the elaboration of a grand, true, alternative, and salvific worldview, but rather as an immense brainstorming session that can inspire countless proposals against North Atlanticentrism, offering us multiple options that we will test. To finish, for those who want to get a better idea of this book, I recommend reading the entire long index of the volume, which is in English version, although with the pagination of the Spanish version. The Spanish version can be downloaded from various sites, especially Latin American Council of Social Sciences, CLACSO. In any case, you can search the internet and you will find a lot of information about this book, particularly on my site at academia.edu. Professor Mohamed El Bouchiki has a copy of my presentation and of the book in both the abridged English version and the complete Spanish version. Those to wish learn more about this book can request copies from him or write to me directly so I can send copies and we can exchange ideas. Muchas gracias from Chile. Chao.